Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Executives in Tech, powered by MavenX, your ServiceNow expert. I'm Catherine Joffrey. I'll be your host today, and I am so excited to welcome one of my good friends. And what I like to say is one of the gurus of retail and tech in Columbus, Ohio, but Dave Cherry. So Dave Cherry is the owner of Cherry Advisory and also an author, which is kind of new for you, Dave. Is that true? I believe you just released a book. Was it a week ago?
Yeah, and so technically, I think I need to call myself more of a curator.
Okay.
So joining with Reagan Avon, who is one of my favorite people in Columbus, she's the founder of Women in Analytics. We started a project about a year ago, and we profiled 47 women leading in analytics around the globe. So these amazing women wrote most of the book. So we've got about a 250 odd page book. I think I wrote about 3 pages of it. So calling me an author is a little bit of a stretch, but certainly a curator and a huge fan of all these women. And that book is now out. It's called Analytics Interpreted, a compilation of perspectives. It's available by ebook out on Amazon right now. And we're just super excited about, promoting these amazing women.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And also, as I'm sure you're aware, we will have Reagan on next week on Executives in Tech. And I do believe Reagan will probably go into a little bit more depth about the book and also with women in analytics. Now that you just shared with me, so for those just joining, you did have the virtual conference, again, just a few weeks ago, but we're going to have an in-person conference coming up for women in analytics.
Yeah, that's the plan. July 21st through 23rd. Here in Columbus, as far as now, kind of knock on wood, we are hoping to be live and in person.
Wonderful. That's exciting. Very excited. So let's also hear a little bit more about Cherry Advisory. So I know you're the founder and owner. So can you tell us a little bit about Cherry Advisory?
Well, you're looking at the entire advisory. It is just me. But I've been doing this now, completing my 8th year of being independent. And what I do is work with companies that are in what I call the customer experience industry. And that's really any organization that has customers. It could be retail. It could be healthcare, financial services. It could be B2C. It can also be B2B. Anytime you have a customer, the things that you need to think about and understand are very similar. And it's really about cultivating that experience, creating the connection to a customer, knowing where your gaps are, and then understanding how to use technology and innovation to close those gaps and using analytics to both measure and inform your decision making. So that in a nutshell is what I'd like to do in terms of the actual advisory. I got a whole bunch of other fun side gigs that I get myself involved in. But that's really the gist of it for Cherry Advisory.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you just touched upon one of the questions that I was looking forward to jumping into today. But you mentioned that you do both business to business, but we're starting to see this shift transpire, right? So today customers expect everything from a relevant content in relation to what they're doing anytime, anywhere, and in any format.
Mm-hmm.
Get on any device, right? So the device that they're choosing, that might be a smartphone, it might be their iPad, but it's their journey that dictates our strategy. How is it that you're able to combat this shift and stay relevant? And also, you mentioned this already, but how is data helping you solve these issues?
So couple things there, because it's kind of a big question. So yeah, no, it's big. Let me start with just talking about the shift. So really over the last, even like 10 to 15 years, the power has shifted significantly into the favor of the consumer. So when we're shopping, we have so much more information at our disposal. We have different options available to us. We have in-depth information. We know a lot more than the sales associate. So, we can look up, where the fabric was made or which celebrity is wearing the product or whether it is sustainable and technical specifications and so forth. And, we come in armed with so much more information and plus the price points of the next couple competitors. Maybe we can see availability online. All this information just makes the consumer that much more informed and that much more powerful. The days of, you going to the corner store and, asking the shopkeeper, what's available. And they say, well, you can have this sweater. We have one in red, green, or blue. Which one do you want? And that's your whole world of options. That's gone. right? And so we can shop anywhere and everywhere. So the consumer really has to be paid attention to and really thought about because they have that power, and it's so easy for them to switch for whatever reason. Now, this notion of the digital consumer, it is ubiquitous there because every interaction with a customer is a digital interaction, whether you want it to be or not, even in store, because we've all, sorry, my virtual background's not showing you, like we've all got one of these things, right? We're always carrying our phone. And so whether or not we intend it to be a digital transaction, you might be engaging with your customer and she's on her phone looking up competitors. She's checking the price of the competitor. She's doing all those different things. So everything is a digital transaction. So I don't even think digital is a necessary adjective anymore, right? It's just transactions. It's just a customer. It's just how things are. Your second question was around data. And how do we actually track data? So I want to share two things with you, and I'm going to date myself here a little bit, but maybe some of the people on the line remember this. There was an old TV show called The X-Files with Mulder and Scully. Do you remember that, Catherine?
I remember The X-Files, yes.
Okay. No. Do you remember what their tagline was?
No, I don't.
Right? So there was like a slogan or a tagline. They always said, "The answers are out there."
Okay.
And the answers are out there when it comes to our customers. So when you think about everything we do, and some people think it's kind of creepy, but I'll tell you why I think it's fantastic, right? People know where we live. They know our age. They know our favorite color. They know our buying preferences, our favorite brands, our price points, whether we respond to coupons, whether we respond to emails, whether we click on Facebook, Instagram, social, like all this information is out there. And so that creates a wealth of information for any providers. Again, whether it's retail, healthcare, financial services, if you put in the work and if you understand that data, you can understand that customer. In fact, I actually wrote a chapter in a book about a year ago on data ethics, and it was called 100% Conversion, Utopia or Dystopia. And so when you think about it, the people that fear that amount of data, they're in that dystopia version. Right? If the retailer or the company knows everything about me, well, I'm kind of weirded out and I'm afraid of that. I look at that as a utopian version because I think it raises the bar on the level of quality and service out there. So if you think about your favorite brand, if they know everything about you, every offer they send to you, you should say yes, right? They know your style. They know your favorite colors. They know if you bought it or not. They know everything about you. So they're just that perfect complement. Everything they offer you, you say, wow, that's the right product in the right context at the perfect price point for me. And it goes well with my outfit or my style, or I love it. And you always say yes. So that's 100% conversion. Now it's not realistic. But why don't we aspire to that? And so that's why I'm excited about that. But I understand that other people are sometimes, creeped out by that. They're more of that dystopian view.
Well, with that view, though, I always hear of the example of Target, right? They had that example where the father and the daughter go in. Would you say that falls more into that view where you start to be a little more skeptical, right? Because now, sure, she needed all that, but at the same time, was that being forced on her? Were there, infringements upon her privacy? Was data collected the correct way? I don't know. I feel like the ethics of data is going to become more and more prominent. And yes, I see this light coming in and I apologize.
No, you're good. Much better. So for those that aren't familiar, the Target story that Catherine was referring to is a few years back, Target was collecting information and it was highly predictive about whether or not a woman was pregnant. And they could tell based on the bundles of products that she was purchasing. And they had this particular customer and they ran their algorithms and it said that she was pregnant. And they marketed towards her. And it turns out that she was a 14-year-old girl. And Target knew she was pregnant before the dad knew she was pregnant. So as a dad of daughters, I can see why that can be kind of distressing. Mm-hmm. So the question about that is when I talk about analytics, and there's an equation that I use that I think is so important for analytics. Insight plus intuition equals better decision making.
Ooh, so insight Intuition.
Yep.
Got it.
So insights, that's your data, that's your algorithms, that's the result of all this stuff that we put together, all the data scientists, the people that are way smarter than me, right? And they tell you that the probability in this example is this customer is pregnant. And by the way, we know the demographic information about her. But then when you add an intuition, another word for that is your experience. Another word for that is context, your risk appetite, right? So you think about all those things and you realize, should we do it? So just because we can do it, and just because analytics can give us a highly probable outcome, once we realize that in that Target example, I bet every Target exec in hindsight would say, yeah, we probably shouldn't, target, bottles and cribs and other baby paraphernalia to a 14-year-old girl. Let's hold off on that one. So just because you can do it with analytics doesn't mean that you should, right? There's that sort of
that ethical piece.
There's like, whether you want to call it like an ethical or just sometimes you wonder, like, don't companies have just like a VP of common sense, right? Like,
you think that's a new title we'll see? Because I know we've talked about it before, that there's going to be this, basically either a director of ethics or even a chief ethics officer that we're going to start to see, because every company claims they're a technology company, right? That was the cool buzzword about 10 years ago is, every company is a tech company, but now every company is a data company. But now you need somebody, to your point, either common sense, ethics, what have you. So what does that look like? Or what do you think it looks like?
So I promise you, Catherine, I didn't plan this. I didn't think I was going to actually do this, but I actually have this book right here, 97 Things About Ethics Everyone in Data Science Should Know. Okay. Mm-hmm. This book, I actually put 2 submissions in this book, and this was actually the inspiration for our Women in Analytics book, just the way that the experts submitted. It was a compilation. So I already told you about my first article, which was the utopia versus dystopia. The second article that I wrote in here was, does data science need a code of ethics? And my answer is no, right? There are already basics around ethics and morality, and whether you subscribe to societal norms, religious norms, other cultural norms, there's so many norms out there. I don't think we need another one that says the data science code of ethics. I just think we need a whole lot of common sense. And I think the rule of common sense can dictate a lot of decision making, without creating another set of rules or standards that we all have to understand.
But will the common sense also create its own set of rules and standards that we still have to understand? Like, are we relabeling it, or what really differentiates the code of ethics as opposed to the common sense?
Well, to me, common sense, it's incredibly contextual, right? So you've got to think about the situation. So, maybe you're more risk averse than I am, right? And so if we have a situation in a business context, you're willing to take a risk, right? So you're less willing to take a risk, right? So in the same setting, the data scientists come back and say, okay, Dave, Catherine, the probability of a successful outcome is 75%. I'm thinking, all right, cool, go. That's really high. We're good. And you're thinking, no, I'm not comfortable with that. And so you understand the decision maker's risk appetite. You think about the context of the decision. So let's take that decision. Are we talking about a $500 decision or a $5 million decision? Right? For $500, okay, 75% is good enough. For $5 million, I might come into your camp and say, maybe that's not a high enough probability of the range of outcomes. So common sense really dictates an understanding of the context and the surroundings of your decision. It's not just that data can overtake and drive things. In fact, I'm giving a talk tomorrow about analytics. One of the questions that they asked me to address was, will the rise of machine learning and deep learning create an automated workforce that will eliminate the need for human beings? And the answer is absolutely not, because we're always going to have that context and that emotion that people need to apply that we can't program into algorithms and robotics.
Okay. And when you say that emotion that we can't program, right? Obviously they can, guess and predict these emotions and outcomes, but you don't think that they can actually convert that work, right? So there's a piece of it that they can't do. They can predict it, they can do all of that, but they're not able to actually execute the work with that precision of emotion. Is that really what we're looking at?
It's whether it's the emotion or think about like your sixth sense. So I'll give you a real life example. Back in 2013, the year before I went independent and started my company, I was working for a company, and we had done a engagement survey, right? So a lot of companies do these engagement surveys. And in 2012, a manager that reported to me got one of the worst scores ever on an engagement in the history of our company. And so that year, he and his team had to meet every Friday and work on action plans for him to become a better manager and so forth. Well, the next year in 2013, the survey results came out and he got a perfect 5.0 score. He was the best person in the company on engagement. And even we had an all hands meeting, and the CIO brought him up on stage and said this person was an example and everybody should aspire to be like him, and how great and the engagement process works and so forth. But I knew something was wrong, right? Even though the data said he was a 5.0, my sense I knew this guy, he was not a good manager. And so I did a little bit of digging and I found out what actually happened. He told his team, he said, hey guys, I hate talking to you as much as you hate talking to me, and I don't like you and you don't like me. But guess what? If you guys give me bad engagement scores, we've got to meet every Friday again. So if you give me fives, we don't have to do this stuff. And lo and behold, his team said, great, we don't like our manager and we don't like talking to him, so let's give him a 5 so we don't have to talk to him. Right? But I knew the organization, I knew my team. I knew that 5 was wrong, but the data was accurate. He scored a 5. So that's an example of intuition or a sixth sense. No algorithm or deep learning, artificial, none of that could ever get that, because they would just see the 5, right? And so that context and that understanding of the situation is something where humans are always going to be necessary.
Okay. And just to play devil's advocate, I just have to ask one last question.
Yeah.
Do you think it can come to a point, though, that again, we can create algorithms to also make sure that we're including that bias, right? So that they're asking the right questions. Because initially, my initial reaction is, well, couldn't you have included a question? Do you like your manager? Has your manager been able to kind of like to weed those out? Maybe not as blunt. That's pretty blunt to say, do you like your manager? Like, obviously. Yeah. But there had to be other questions that could maybe have basically, as you said, your intuition caught it, but the algorithm could have also caught those differentiating factors.
So that's a great question, Catherine, and it's also one of the hottest topics in analytics right now, and it's about bias and analytics.
Right.
And the hard part is that whether intentionally or unintentionally, we all have biases that we bring into how we program. And so the programs are only as good as the people that program. So there's some famous examples where some Google facial recognition algorithms, equated an African American person with a gorilla. And they were a bunch of white programmers who didn't realize that was something that they shouldn't do. I actually saw an interesting tweet today that was funny. It was something that said, show me that your design, that the design of this building was by a man and you didn't include any women in the design, and the floor was a mirror, right? And so I'm sure they didn't think about that, but as a man, just okay, whatever. Hey, the mirror looks cool. You wouldn't think anything. That's a great design element. And so you're bringing your biases in, and when you don't have a diverse perspective, you're not really able to create algorithms that don't have your same biases.
Right.
So then when the algorithms are biased, now the outputs are biased, but what we end up doing is we attribute a higher level of significance. Well, the algorithm said this person was more likely to be a criminal, or this person was more likely to default on a loan. Well, the algorithms that were created, those had inherent biases in those examples, from racial and socioeconomic standpoints. But then it's self-perpetuating. So it's a really, really difficult topic, and one that we haven't really unpacked significantly yet. And so I think in the short term, you just still need human beings involved in the process. We're not quite at a fully automated, nor do I think we ever want to be in just an automated robotic civilization.
No, but it is interesting how much an algorithm means to the entirety of machine learning. And I think that lost a lot of times. And it really does, to your point, come down to those biases, and often the biases that our developers or coders are not aware of, and we ourselves are not aware of, right?
Absolutely.
It's very interesting, and it's the scope. It just goes on and on. It's almost like a black hole. But yeah, so we'll go on to the next question. But I love that. All right. So another question. I guess we'll kind of stay with data here. So data coming from multiple sources can be difficult to manage. How have you helped organizations manage this data as it's all coming in from all these different sources, especially to we'll stay on this topic of machine learning, but as they start to transition into more machine learning?
Yeah. So I use a technique called decision modeling. Mm-hmm. And decision modeling, it starts back in 2002. And so if you remember Carly Fiorina, she was the head of HP at the time. And she said the purpose of analytics is to take data, turn that into information, and turn those pieces of information into insights. And everybody thought she was brilliant. Like, oh, that's wonderful. Data to information to insights. There we go. And I think she stopped 2 steps too soon. Because if we only end up with insights, the joke I always use is it's only valuable to one company, right? Insights are only valuable to Snapple, right? And you've heard me.
Oh, yeah.
Tidbit. The 43% of consumers, like green on Tuesdays, and it's a great cocktail party conversation. But what you need to do is connect that insight to a decision or action that making that decision or action creates value. So now you've got a 5-step process that goes from data to information to insight to action to a value. So now if we start at step 4 and you say, what action do we need to take? So maybe you need to take action, determine what price to assign to a particular product, right? Will it sell well at that price? And so I asked you, Catherine, how confident are you in your initial price? And you say, well, I'm not so confident. I wish I knew A, B, and C. Well, A, B, and C are insights. So now I can go back, and if I can furnish you with those insights, you'll have higher confidence as that decision maker. Now, what are those insights made of? Streams of information. So now I can break those down into information streams. And what are those information streams made of? Core data elements. And then what I can do now is I'm linking a specific data element to the information, to the insight, to the decision. And now I know what data is relevant to critical decision making. I also know, by the way, all these other data points out here that we have so many of them in our companies that never make it into the decision making process, right? But we spend so much time managing them and reporting on them and talking about them, but nobody really uses them. So they're really extraneous. So I always go through that decision modeling technique to try to figure out how do we find the data, internal or external, that is most critical to making better decisions in our company.
Wonderful. So it's really getting the data to the right people so that, to your point, you can make those correct decisions.
Exactly. Yep.
All right. So another question we have is we've heard the term the new digitally conscious consumer. Essentially, digital transformation has changed consumer habits. Because of the opportunities that arise from using technology, customers often rate organizations on their digital customer experience. Now, obviously, you've redefined this a little bit because every digital experience is just an experience at this point. But what can a company do to ensure first great digital experiences, or in terms of just a great first impression, right?
So the thing, couple things that I think about is I think one is don't think about creating a great digital experience. Don't worry about, what I call the Me Too strategy, right? So your competitor's doing something, so we better do that right away as well, because if they're doing it, we better be doing it, right? You've really got to think to yourself about why does your company exist, and why do you exist in the mind of your consumer? Right. Your target consumers typically have one of several motivations. They either like you because of the great service you provide, the great quality of your brand, the great value, or the convenience that you have. And not every customer is the same. So you have some customers that are in every quadrant, right? In all 4 of those different drivers. Sometimes you have a customer that operates in multiple areas. Right. So understand what they want, and then understand what you need to do to excel in those different areas. And then think about the tactics that create that amazing experience. So maybe one of your tactics is, a viral video on TikTok. Maybe it is using RFID. Maybe it is about an augmented or virtual reality experience, right? Those are just tactics. And I think too many times we get executives, particularly in the IT ranks, that look at the technology and the innovation as the objective. It's really not the objective. They are means to get there. The objective is a great experience and an emotional reaction, a connection with the customer that you're trying to achieve. And if you look at it that way, I think you'll be in good shape.
Awesome. Good answer. I like that. Thank you. And then just one overall question. So basically looking towards the future, what's next? What do you hope to achieve in your career, and what are some of the initiatives that you're taking in 2021?
So for me, Catherine, it's really simple. I love talking about this stuff. I just try to simply educate and elevate the people that I come in contact with, whether that be clients, students, colleagues. I'm a huge fan. I think you've heard me talk about one of my favorite books, Give and Take by Adam Grant. I love giving away my knowledge and my wisdom and whatever I can do to help people. So I try to do that through my consulting. I try to do that through some of the other organizations, Women in Analytics, the Digital Solutions Gallery, Columbus Fashion Alliance, C-Bus Retail. I just keep trying to stack one good day on top of another. And if I can keep doing that and help somebody out along the way, we'll see where it takes me. I don't have any specific goals or targets. I don't need a corner office, or I'm not looking for a fancy title or anything like that. I just try to keep having a good day, one on top of another.
That's awesome. And I will say you're doing some really cool stuff at Columbus Fashion Alliance. I just had a great conversation and really excited to see as that continues to grow. And I know a lot of new equipment there, especially for really anyone that's looking to start up in the fashion industry, especially entrepreneurs. So just a plug in for them, great opportunity.
Yeah, we have sewing machines there. I actually was down there a couple of weeks ago. I did my first ever direct to print garment. So I made a T-shirt.
Really?
Yeah, so
that's kind of cool. Do you have it? I'd love to see it. That's really neat.
It's in the closet, but
okay.
We can create designs. We're actually going to be hosting a webinar at the end of the month. We just got this gentleman from Verizon 5G, who's the head of what they call Riot Labs, which is pretty cool stuff. He's going to be on a panel that we're doing, and we're going to be doing some design challenges coming up in the next couple of months. Things where we encourage the community to engage, and we might have a design challenge maybe with an artist or a musician or a particular type of technology, and we want teams to come in and design clothes. And you'll be working with creatives and working with fabricators and our machines, and literally in like 2 or 3 days you'll have a new garment. So it's really, really cool stuff we're doing with the Fashion Alliance.
It is. It's awesome stuff. I love the marketing. I'm following you guys on Instagram. So really, really cool stuff.
Awesome.
So appreciate all you guys are doing. We did have a few questions come in. So I do have a few to grab. And just for those, in case you haven't already submitted your questions, please feel free to go ahead and submit those. But I'm going to go ahead and take the ones that have come in so far. So one is, why do organizations lack true empathy for customer needs? What is the root cause?
So I'm gonna give two answers there, because I think there's two root causes. One, they flat out don't care. All right. They're looking for profit. They look at transactions and conversions and marketing expense, and it's all at an aggregate level. And they really don't care about the customer and empathizing and understanding, what she's after, right? She's not real to them. I think something that contributes to that many times, and I've seen this a lot in retail, is that many times the executives at these companies are not the actual customer. So it kind of goes back to these biases, implicit that I've talked about, and I've been in a couple of these organizations, when you've got a bunch of people that look like me working at Victoria's Secret or working at Ann Taylor, and, we're looking around, or even, I remember a conversation, I was working with Asina and we were talking about justice. And we were all saying, hey, what does an 11-year-old girl want? And, I'm saying, well, she wants this. And someone else says, well, she wants that, and so forth. We're looking around the table, and none of us are 11-year-old girls. right? And so how do we know what she wants? So they don't empathize because they don't relate, they don't talk enough to their actual customers, to really understand. And if you combine that with lack of caring, it shows pretty clearly in those kind of organizations.
Absolutely. Maybe that's where the focus groups. Do you think people are still using focus groups today?
So I think focus groups are good. I'm not as big a fan of those. I'm not as big a fan of surveys. Uh, I think what's most impactful, and this is actually where brands that have brick and mortar stores have such an amazing advantage over Amazon, is they get to see the customer in person, live and in the flesh. They see the elation when they find the right product, or, how disappointed they are when it doesn't fit or it's out of stock or whatever. Talk to your have your associates talk to the customers, right? You can demonstrate your empathy one-on-one. I mean, it's really hard for Amazon to empathize with me, right? I get an automated email or, whatnot. But when you see them in person, I just really appreciate that opportunity to connect with your customers. It's real, it's unfiltered, it's candid, and to me that's much more meaningful than, in a focus group, which is a controlled setting, or a survey, which I just want to click. I'll give you all 10 so I can get the 10% off on the coupon code, right? It's not as meaningful to me.
Absolutely. All right, two more questions. I'm going to pair
Okay.
them together. What are practical steps an organization can take to reconnect with customer needs? Also, should companies treat all customers the same?
So let me answer the first one with my last answer. Listen, really understand your customers. Talk to them when you're in your store. That's the most important thing. Treat them as individuals and actually listen and actually care what they're saying. And so should you treat every customer the same? Absolutely not. For anyone who's a parent out there, you've had this conversation, right? Do we treat all of our kids the same? No, but we try to treat them fairly, right? So when you have a customer, and I'm a big fan of a notion called CLV, which is customer lifetime value. If you're a high customer lifetime value customer for me, I'm going to treat you excellently, right? That's what, I think like Marriott or Ritz Carlton, and you're the platinum gold level. Airlines do this, right? You get extra perks. You get extra leniency. Maybe I won't charge you a shipping charge. Maybe I won't, I'll let you keep it if you return it and it doesn't fit, or like you get extra bonuses and perks. If you're a new customer, maybe you don't get those. But then again, thinking about that contextually, maybe sometimes there's things I'll do for a new customer that I won't do for an existing customer because I want her business. I want her to try my product. So do you treat all customers the same? No. Do you treat them all fairly? Absolutely.
Love it. Great stuff. Well, I think that's all of our questions today. So Dave, I really appreciate you joining us on Executives in Tech. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to see you. So thanks for all that tuned in. Again, this was, we had Dave Cherry and on Executives in Tech powered by MavenX. So thanks everyone. Dave, it was so good to see you again.
Great to see you too, Catherine. Take care.
Take care, everyone.